we've heard all day yesterday and today, the challenges that occur at the federal level with climate, nature, and as priorities are shifting and so on. We know, all of us, that as many of the experiences of the panelists who were just here reflect, that a lot of the innovative ideas around climate, around conservation, around how we are stewarding the lands for which we have responsibility, they're all incubated at the state or provincial level. And so we're now going to listen to some amazing leaders who represent expertise at this very critical sub-federal level. It will be moderated by Ruth Musgrave, who most recently was a former Washington Governor Jay Inslee's senior policy advisor and is currently serving as the senior conservation advisor for the National Caucus of Environmental Legislators. And Ruth, if you'll come and have your panelists join you, we're going to hear a little bit about how the focus at the state and provincial level, as we've been talking about these transboundary projects, can occur in that context.
Square dancing. Thank you so much for that nice introduction. I'm Ruth Musgrave with the National Caucus of Environmental Legislators, and that was such a humbling panel. It brings back so many memories of my work with Governor Inslee, because when I started as his senior policy advisor for natural resources, I was not informed that 65 to 75% of my work was going to be with tribes, but it was some of the richest work I've ever done in my life. It was incredibly humbling and incredibly inspiring at the same time. So thank you so much for that panel. It was just terrific. We have the gold standard today to talk about state subnational policies that maintain momentum and gain momentum in biodiversity in this country and in Canada and in Mexico. We have today Sara Aminzadeh, Deputy Secretary for External Affairs with the California Natural Resources Agency, and Jacob Martin-Malus, Assistant Deputy Minister in charge of Biodiversity, Wildlife, and Parks with the Ministry of Environment in Quebec. Before we start with these two, I'll tell you a little bit about NCEL, because I think most of you, well, I've worked with some of you, because I was with NCEL before I worked with Governor Inslee. I actually founded the Conservation Division of NCEL because I have always felt that subnational is where it's at. If you're really gonna save wildlife and habitat, you have to do it on the subnational level. And I think the former panelists were really correct when they said, you know, things are going to change at the federal level a lot, and sometimes we're lucky enough to have Ambassador Salazar on the federal level, but the state work has to go on no matter what. The provincial work has to go on no matter what. And so I approached NCEL after directing the Center for Wildlife Law at the University of New Mexico Law School for 20 years. And I said, you all do work on climate, you do work on pollution, but you really need to do work on conservation and wildlife. And they said, okay, well, we don't have any money for that, but you'd be welcome to do it. So I raised the money, and now we have a division. NCEL is a non-profit association of state legislators. It was created by 12 state legislators who were having dinner together. One of them had been a staffer on Capitol Hill, and he had actually drafted the Clean Water Act and Clean Air Act. And they all sat around saying, how can we pass environmental laws at the state level? We don't have the staff that the federal congressional folks have. And they said, well, let's just band together and communicate. Well, now we have 1,200 legislators, and we're kind of their remote staff. We do research for them. We help educate them. They let us know what issues they are interested in. I'll give you a quick example. Someone will call and say, what do I do about pesticides and pollinators? And then we can pretty much bury them with examples from other states, get them in contact with other state legislators, and they can work on that. They can even work with them on strategy. So that's what NCEL is, and I have to apologize in advance because I just finished with Governor Inslee, and I think I'll just be switching kind of back and forth between the two because I'm fresh back at NCEL. So I'm really happy to hear from Sara and Jacob about your work. It really is the gold standard. So Sara, I'll let you start.
Actually, Jacob's going to start.
Oh, okay, Jacob, you're going to start.
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. Super to be with you today. Nice to meet with you, Sara. We've been working California and Quebec together for many years, and I think we've presented a path that can be interesting for other partners to be inspired by. So we'll be sharing a few words about this today. I'll be quick on the slides. I won't spend too much time on the slides for presenting Quebec. Most of you know where Quebec is, so all the way east through Canada. A flight last night reminded me the distance. I'm ADM for the Quebec government. We hosted COP15 in Montreal a few years back, so probably a few of you were there for COP15. And we developed, is somebody going to do the slides for me? If it's possible, yeah. So I'll talk about our nature plan. I think it's the best way to present what Quebec's been doing and present myself. Thanks, Sara, I appreciate it. So what the nature plan is Quebec's answer to the new global framework that was adopted, the Kunming-Montreal biodiversity framework. So we built this answer to the new framework through about 18 months period. So I'll talk about this today to be presenting what we're doing. So we can switch slides already, Sara. So globally, the nature plan is a strategy towards all targets that are in the global framework. So it's a traditional policy document, but we did things a little differently to actually build this framework. So there's historical funds that were invested into this answer from Quebec. So there's actually a $922 million fund supporting the initiative. And I actually signed an extra $100 million a few weeks ago with the federal government. So we capped the $1 billion funds supporting the initiative. So that's, I'll be talking about that a bit later on, but that makes a difference when you're trying to do things on the land. And I won't go through the whole document, but one of the main things that we did differently is building this initiative with civil society and specifically with First Nations. So we worked through 18 months of discussions through all communities over Quebec's land. So all local communities, yes, but specifically Indigenous communities were main partners in building this answer because we don't do land management without working with First Nations. It just doesn't work that way. And we've sort of made our way through that in the last few years in Quebec, and it's making a difference. And I'm not there to say that everything is perfect in Quebec or in Canada and that things are just doing well, but we've tried to work our way through this new way of doing things, and it has made quite a bit of a difference. Next slide, please, Sara. So as you see, there's some key foundations there, and the first one to the left, and that actually inspired the work throughout the nature plan, is involving First Nations and Inuit up north. I'm actually collaborating very tightly with the Inuit in northern Quebec, and obviously, there's a bunch of other civil implications that we worked on throughout these foundations for the nature plan. And the structure looks a bit like the next slide, Sara, and I won't read you through it, obviously, but it gives you an idea. So that we have 3 goals, and it's inspired entirely by the Global Biodiversity Framework. And all of this is available online, so don't worry about pictures, and we can easily access the information. So you see Quebec adopted targets, its own targets that are adapted to its territory, but that link to the global framework, biodiversity frameworks. You see completely to the right there, you see the links towards the GBF targets. So we have targets on planning, on involving degraded ecosystems restoration, on protection, on obviously target 3, everyone knows about 30 by 30, so that's one of the main areas where we're working on. Next slide, please. So 30 by 30, speaking of, in Quebec, we have, I did a little Google this morning, Sarah, to look at the size of Quebec, California population. It's quite interesting. Roughly, Quebec is about 4 times the surface area of California. It's 1.6 million square kilometers, but it has 4.6 times less people on the land. So this initiates completely different strategies and things that we have to work on, obviously. So you have an idea where we're at right now. Roughly 17.7% of the land is protected by strict protected areas. So we're focused very, very strong, strict, and on marine, 20.81% of the marine land is protected. Next, so that gives you the map. I think Sarah should have a comparative also to give you an idea. You see how the protected areas in green and in red cover the entirety of the land in Quebec. So it goes on like this. There's a few other slides that we'll go very quickly over. There's goals 2 that talk about agriculture, forestry, and also sustainable wildlife use. And goal 3 on the next slide, I believe. So targets are more related to industrial, ecological, finance, and work like this. So in this goal, there's also the stakeholders situation that's focused on, and for example, Indigenous led initiatives are supported by a $30 million fund that's dedicated specifically for Indigenous led initiatives. And with the agreement that we just signed with the federal government, an additional $30 million is also tagged for supporting these Indigenous-led initiatives. So it's really a transversal approach that has changed things. And there we go for that little introductions. Next steps, we're actually working on what we say in French. I'm sorry, I have to translate in my head as I go on. La mise en œuvre. So we're putting things forward and going into action on this nature plan. So happy to share things on that today.
Thank you. I'm just waiting for my slides to come up and then I'll get started. Really happy to be here with all of you. The California Natural Resources Agency has a mission to protect California's natural and historical resources for both current and future generations. I want to say a little bit about California's role in this moment in building and maintaining momentum and gains in meeting biodiversity and climate goals. And I would just quote Ambassador Salazar, who was quoting Martin Luther King and saying, you know, we look to hew a stone of hope out of a mountain of despair. And I would just say that my hope, our hope, is that California can perhaps be a boulder of hope in this moment, in this mountain of despair, and this onslaught of rollbacks and attacks that we're seeing at the federal government, the potential for sale of public lands, the potential for rescission and shrinking of national monuments that many of us work so hard to establish and to expand, the potential for rollback of environmental protection laws, and a lack of respect for tribal sovereignty. But we have weathered storms like this before, and we will find a way to move forward despite the headwinds that we're facing. And I think a big part of doing so will be continued and even increased subnational cooperation, like the strong cooperation we have with Quebec and others, and like we'll talk to you about today. So California's 30 by 30 plan, you know, like Quebec, we have this map which shows our conservation areas, and we are well on our way to meeting this goal. As of about 3 months ago, we have 25.2% of lands durably protected and 16.2% of coastal waters. And in achieving this goal and reaching for this goal within 2030, we've achieved some real meaningful wins along the way that not only strive towards this conservation goal, but really reflect our values in doing so. For example, we recently allocated 650 acres to the first Black land trust in California near the Tahoe National Forest. We've also invested $100 million in tribal nature-based solutions, in land back and land return. We've expanded 2 national monuments as well as designated two new additional monuments. And we've recently passed a $10 billion climate bond that can support climate resilience, habitat restoration, and clean water throughout the state. Oh. Well, I had a few other slides, but I think it's best to go into discussion anyway in our limited time and get into it. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. This one doesn't seem to be working. So you can see how incredible their work has been individually, subnationally, and then working cross-border, nationally. NCEL only works right now within the United States with states. We work with some territories. We hope to work with provinces soon, and we hope to work in Mexico soon. We think that would be a really exciting addition for our state legislators to gain more, I guess, depth of knowledge about how important biodiversity is. So I have a couple of questions for you all. Let's start with a fairly, it may be easy for you given all of your experience. What is the most critical form of subnational action, and how could it be made the most effective?
Do you want to go first? Go ahead. I would point to a couple of things. So first is our High Ambition Coalition and our subnational government task force that we co-lead with Quebec. And this allows us to collaborate with leading edge states and provinces from around the world to push each other to go further and faster on 30 by 30 than we otherwise would. I would also point to our MOUs. We have an MOU with Quebec on biodiversity, which allows us to support each other through relationships, technical assistance, and meetings to, again, just try to raise the bar in terms of what can be accomplished. What would you add, Jacob?
Actually, I had the same main ideas, Sarah, but I'll push forward on that and say that when we work on these initiatives together, California and Quebec, especially during COPs, for example, the energy that is created around that synergy between California and Quebec is very highly it raises people's interest out wide. People get there's energized by the presence of both the state and the province together working forward on this. It really makes a big difference, and events that we have on the task force, for example, are always a key moment during COPs when both the state and the province are on stage and are talking about their initiatives and presenting what has been done and creating that momentum with other subnationals that are actually adding up slowly on the list there. We have more states that joined in on the task force recently, Massachusetts, I believe, Vermont also.
New Jersey just
New Jersey, really? Like, I didn't know that, didn't have that on the list.
Just in the past week, yeah.
That's amazing. So you see the effect that that's having, and that's really putting people into action and sharing positive impacts that have been positive actions that have been put forward by California and Quebec. Sharing that with other subnationals is making a big difference. So I'd say that's quite impressive. And your secretary on stage also helps to gain that momentum. People, you know, in French there's an expression, l'habit fait pas le moine. So the suit doesn't make the person, but he has a huge effect on people, and it makes a big difference. And I hope that momentum is kept along.
That's right. And Secretary Crowfoot is actually in South Africa right now on another stage making a difference. We have another subnational partnership called the Mediterranean Climate Action Partnership, where we're partnering with subnationals around the world who have similar climates and also face extreme heat and wildfire and drought. And so we are carrying the banner around the world in multiple different venues and forums. I want to give one tangible example of our subnational cooperation and how our relationship with Quebec in particular has made a difference. We were able to learn about your Guardians program and your tribal marine protected areas, and that is really inspiring us to think about, in terms of our monuments and our protected areas, how can we raise the bar in terms of how we provide tribes with their rightful role as stewards of the lands. As has been said numerous times during this conference, tribes have been stewarding these lands for time immemorial and have a rightful place as the managers of these lands as we set up new types of protections. And so we're learning a lot from Quebec about how to do that in real time.
It's going to be hard to ask questions, Ruth, because I think we're having a discussion going
I
ongoing.
think it's fantastic, and I'm about to jump into.
It's a good point, Sarah. I was up north in November announcing the creation of the 28th National Park in Quebec. That was November 24th, I believe. Up north, it's an immense park that we created. It's around the biggest natural lake in Quebec. And it's going to be entirely managed, run by the Cree Nation in that area. So Quebec is supporting financially. We'll have funds available for the Cree Nation, but that park is going to be 100% run by the First Nation that is on that territory, and then that again is going to make a huge difference. So that's just one example of how we work that way. We have legislation that we modified in 2021 where we integrated the indigenous protected areas. There's a English term for that, but I only have the French in mind. But so in our legislation, there's indigenous protected areas that already existent and can be presented by First Nations to the government and then run, and the surveillance is done by First Nations on the land. Everything is run by the First Nations, and it grows into such a wonderful partnership. Makes a huge difference. You're right, Sarah.
And this made a difference for us in real time. So last year we saw the establishment of 2 new national monuments, and tribes were key architects of the design of both monuments and will be involved in the management of those lands moving forward. We also learned in real time as we were establishing the Chumash National Marine Sanctuary. So this partnership, is not just something fun that we do at international conferences. It's not just the relationship we have in a technical workshop. It's actually moving the needle on protections that are happening and creating, I think, a virtuous cycle, a race to the top of how we can do better and faster.
There is some competition in there, too.
Exactly. I was going to say that, too.
OECMs, we've learned so much from California on other conservation measures. It's helped us immensely. So you see how one is giving, the other is, and that's making great, super positive competition. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, you can see how inspiring it is for these two to work together. And so I can't resist. I have to throw in one example that is not transboundary, but it is trans-government. I was lucky enough to work with the White House and the great folks at CEQ on a stay of litigation on the lower Snake River dams, which litigation had been going on for 30 years to try to save the salmon. Well, we were able to work with the state of Washington, the state of Oregon, the Yakima tribe, the Nez Perce, the Warm Springs, and Umatilla, and we 6 sovereigns pretty much came together with our own work plan, and the White House, to their great credit, adopted it did a memorandum of agreement, memorandum of understanding, sorry. We all signed the stay of litigation, and to my knowledge, it's all still ongoing. It was so great to work with Oregon almost every day, with the governor's office, and with the tribes pretty much every day. So you can really make these things work if you get creative and you trust each other and you just keep moving forward. It's with or without the federal government, I think we could have accomplished that. So I have a question for you all, you too, because you have such great presence at the COPs, at the COPs. What do you see as advantageous for your work at the COPs, and what could other subnational organizations and governments gain from what you've done already? Because you've really set the bar high.
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to join the California delegation to the United Nations Climate COP this year in Baku, Azerbaijan. And this was 3 days after the US election. And I think it's impossible to overstate the importance of our presence there, along with Governor Jay Inslee, in that moment, because we were able to have a conversation not about what will the federal government do or undo, but what will California and other United States do in this moment? What will we continue to do? And that leadership filled a critical void, and I think will be increasingly important as we see, national politics swing wildly from side to side in terms of what we're committing to. We heard yesterday about the establishment of marine protected areas and then the rollback of those protected areas. We're likely going to see a similar swing with our national monuments. It is essential that state governments stand up and fill that leadership void and can provide that certainty and clarity of vision in times when the national landscape is shifting so wildly. So I think that's a key role. I mean, California has the 4th largest economy in the world now. So it really matters what we say, what we do, and how we show up. And that is something we're absolutely committed to continue doing.
Jacob?
Yeah, it's amazing what California creates as a momentum for other subnationals and in COPs. Yes, there's provinces and states, but there's very close collaborations with local communities. Cities play a key role in organizing the subnational events alongside the national events like COPs usually put forward. So this synergy created between states and provinces and cities is actually where, 90 to 95% of biodiversity protection is being actually deployed on the land, I would say. Actually, in Quebec, it's probably 95% for sure. The role is mainly for cities and for provinces and in Canada in general. So these events are a key moment to bring these together, and again, the examples that Sara was using a bit earlier, like the task force and the MOU between California and Quebec, are used as examples to favor this synergy with local communities. So I think those events have that great ability to bring people together. There's 2 words that I remember, more than 2 words, but from the initial speech from Mr. Salazar, but he said, somos familia. We feel that when we're working at COPs and boundaries and borders sort of fly, and we work together on common objectives, and we lose sometimes that momentum between COPs, but we have to keep that going, and I hope those events will be still key moments for us for biodiversity.
Thank you. I think that's so true. I'll share that NCEL did send a participant as well, partly to observe why other states aren't participating. And there were some people from other states, but you all had a formal delegation, and that's what we would like to see at these COPs, because they're extremely important. They are transboundary. It's a chance for everyone to meet and talk with each other. And so our goal at NCEL, even though we don't lobby, we can find the funding to get some of our state legislators to come and maybe convince various governors to send formal delegations. So that's our dream on this end.
That's interesting. And California had 100 people in their delegation at Cali this fall. I think Quebec had 103, probably a little bit more in California.
There's that competition again.
But Wade wasn't sure about that number. Yeah. But just to give you an idea.
We dispute that number.
But you see how that happens, and we want to create that momentum for other states and other provinces to participate. We hope BC is a great partner. BC is amazing. They're the only other province in Canada that actually reached the targets in 2020 with Quebec. And they're being also a leader, and we want to create that with other partners.
Yeah, that's great, yes. And BC, you're doing a fantastic job, I have to say. So impressive. So this is a question that I think we've covered throughout the conference, but it's worth repeating and discussing here, and that is with changing federal priorities, particularly in the U.S., conservationists are increasingly worried that federal governments are stepping away from leadership on biodiversity. So moving forward, what do you see as some key tactics or ideas or strategies that provinces and states can implement to keep momentum moving forward on biodiversity goals?
Yeah, I think about this almost every second of every day. I don't feel worried. I feel resolute. Perhaps unlike climate, we know that conservation, nature, public lands, outdoor access, these are widely bipartisan supported issues, right? There is not a person in North America, in my opinion, that doesn't want to be able to go outside and spend time in nature under a tree, whatever that means for them. And so we found a lot of hope in this moment that, and polling supports this, that people across the country want to see public lands protected much more than they want to see lands developed for housing or for drilling. So that's a opportunity. We're also increasing the diversity of the movement and of stakeholders. So CNRA recently did a webinar with veterans organizations, with the Motorcycle Industry Council, with backcountry hunters and anglers. We are, having a bigger tent, changing what it means to look and act like a conservationist. So I see a lot of opportunity in this moment. Yesterday it was said that, are we gonna be a speed bump in Trump's effort to completely radicalize the way that we see public lands, or will he be a speed bump in ours? I see it slightly differently. I think we're in the middle of a revolution, a drastic reordering of the way that we do government, particularly when it comes to the environment. But I see the opportunity for our revolution, which can be sparked by a gross overreach and overreaction by the federal administration to try to take something away that is universal. It's a miscalculation on their part, and it's on all of us to seize the opportunity and make the most of it.
Absolutely. Jacob?
We just had an election here in Canada. We don't have a clear indication yet on what the direction is going to be, but we do believe that it should be relatively positive because of the platform from the government that was actually elected actually points towards nature a lot as a solution. We've worked together, California and Quebec, on nature-based solutions. That concept, we're really pushing that forward, and it is a way to use a positive image for citizens to have an effect, yes, on their close environment. For example, houses that are near natural environments have a higher value. So there is an economical approach to everything, but we can use that also to work on both crises, both the biodiversity and the climate crisis. For example, in Quebec, we have the watershed legislation to protect wetlands that are near communities. And so that's actually an approach where we're working on both sides, and we're well aligned with the federal approach in Canada. And like I said again a bit earlier, it's biodiversity is such a provincial responsibility. The federal government does do some actions in biodiversity. I'm not saying they're absent, but they have their own strategy. They have their own nature plan in Canada, and we align with that. But everything happens in provinces and cities, so that's really where we're acting right now.
And I will just add that states, we work with state legislators, they don't understand biodiversity. We get so many blank looks, and then if we sit down and really explain it to them, it's like the doors open and that person becomes a champion. But we need to have simple messaging, alternative messaging to the word biodiversity. You know, you can say pollinators, you can say connectivity, you can even say public traffic safety to get wildlife corridors and crossings. And that's what we're doing. We have a whole list of messaging items that we can approach state legislators with, and it does work on a bipartisan level, and I'd be interested to know from you all how you work. I know you've indicated that it can be bipartisan, how you see that developing on a bipartisan level, support for biodiversity.
I think we have to talk about the benefit and the impact to rural communities. A lot of rural communities depend on tourism from people visiting and wanting to go to their national park or their monument. So it's an economic boon and a relatively rare economic opportunity for a lot of rural areas. I think we have to talk about this in more neutral terms. Nature, you know, is a relatively simple term of art. But I think every person in the world wants to be able to go to their local park, right? To have a birthday celebration for their kid or their grandkid, to be able to go to the beach for a wedding or an end-of-life celebration or a special day of some kind. I just think that that's universal, and the more that we can tap into that, the better. We've been talking a lot with veterans organizations recently who talk about the importance of nature and natural areas in their healing from the traumas of war. I think these are things that everybody, right or left, blue or red, can identify with.
That's super to hear. When I walked out of the plane last night, the first thing I saw when I was crossing a tunnel there was a sign up, and there was a green sign, and it got my attention. First, it was in French. It was nice, but it was a surprise for me. Second, it was Ducks Unlimited. That was, and it was something related, I don't remember exactly, but protecting wetlands is making sure we have good drinking water and this and that. And that, I mean, that just feels so great to see that civil society is jumping up and putting those messages through for nature. Like you said, I agree. Personally, I think it's the best word to try and illustrate what biodiversity is. We use nature in Quebec also as our locomotive. And it's making a big difference. It's positive. There was in the preparing documents, I saw something that said something like climate change issues are divisive and nature is uniting, something like that. I felt that was something that talked to me once again. Somos familia, we can focus on that, and actually focusing on nature is going to give us solutions to also to the climate crisis. So everything is related, and there's a message of hope. That was the message from Mr. Salazar also this morning, and I think that there are periods when things are more difficult, but we have to have that vision on a more long-term approach, and there is hope for this file. I'm very positive.
Yeah, and just to add, every person, no matter what their political affiliation, no matter what industry they might be a part of, they don't have pictures of a coal mine or a freeway on their walls, right? They probably have pictures of their family or themselves in a natural area. And you ask somebody, what's your favorite park? Everyone has one. Most people have one. So it can be unifying.
And our experience is, we're nonpartisan. Our experience is that it really can be unifying as long as you hit the right issue that that person wants to hear about. So in Colorado, for example, we really wanted to help establish habitat connectivity and wildlife corridors. We ended up with a Republican bill sponsor because he wanted to help game species be able to migrate so they would survive and be huntable and all. Well, that works for us, and the bill has passed, and Colorado is continuing and doing more and more. And that kind of leads to we're almost out of time, but one of my last questions was going to be pivoting to 30 by 30, which we've already pivoted to because you all are deeply involved in it. How do you see 30 by 30 as helping biodiversity and also habitat connectivity, which we've talked a lot about today, and we've seen it as a useful tool to reach 30 by 30?
Actually, connectivity, it's not public yet, so I'm sort of reaching out a bit beforehand here, but we're really going to be using connectivity as our main message towards the 30 by 30 targets. We launched, even before adopting the nature plan, I presented a bit earlier, an appel à projet, a call for propositions, if I could say that like that. It's a public call of propositions for protected areas in Quebec. We received, I believe it's 511 propositions for protected areas throughout Quebec, and we're analyzing all the possible connectivity issues that could be illustrated through these propositions that come from civil society. So they're inside all of these. I mean, we can't adopt those 500 projects because we'll be blocking most of Quebec's possible development, but we can use connectivity to have measures that are actually going to link our network of protected areas and help us reach these 30 by 30 targets, because the more we go forward, the harder it gets. We have 17% right now of protected areas, but the next percentages to reach the 30% are the hardest because we've done the easy part. So we necessarily have to reach towards connectivity. And just to illustrate, it's incredibly huge in terms of land in Quebec. I spoke of the 1.6 billion square kilometers in Quebec. Our network right now is over 220,000 square kilometers of strict protected areas. So we have to find a way to link these projects, whether it's for wildlife movements, whether it's for adaptation to climate change. We're going to need that connectivity for better adaptation. So that's the work we're putting forward.
And 30 by 30 is essential in California because it keeps it top of mind for us among so many competing priorities. In particular, we want to achieve 100% clean energy by 2045, which can be seen as potentially at odds with conserving large swaths of land and water. And so it forces us to embrace this positive tension and show how we can achieve both. It's top of mind for the governor. He's tracking our 30 by 30. And it really helps us keep on track to achieve this goal no matter what else is happening in our state, in the country, in the world.
That's fantastic. And I'll say, just this last session, we saw over 50 bills from different states on habitat connectivity. People are really starting to wake up to it. And we talked about the fact that now it's common knowledge and it's what people do. I would like to close by saying this is so amazing what they are doing, and I would encourage you to follow their lead. And then I also just want to say to all of you, democracy is not a spectator sport. I can't tell you how many legislators I've met with and they've said, well, my constituents haven't contacted me, or wildlife is not a constituent that can speak to me. You can speak to them, and they really want to hear from you. And if you meet with them, it will make an impact. I guarantee it. You can come to me if it doesn't, especially if you meet as a group. And if you meet with the agencies, so you have their backing, and then get a legislator to sponsor a bill, and they can help you draft it. Anyway, I just really encourage you all to get involved on that level. Well, thank you all so much. Boy, it's
Thank you.
been an honor.
Thank you, everyone.